share a little bit of my recent work. So I did my undergraduate here in linguistics, specifically in experimental phonology. And I'm always looking for ways to bridge the fields of linguistics and music. And I think music theory right now, especially in America, has some dangerous tendencies to kind of isolate things, make them overly vertical, freeze them in time, and tools specifically from phonology are a useful way of getting out of this mindset. So this is basically an overview of some research that I was doing this summer in China and some recent directions for my own dissertation. Okay, so here is my basic layout of questions I'm asking. So in America, we have more and more interest now in Chinese contemporary music, right? That's been an increasing trend, and we'll see that happening for the next century at least. We have a pretty good knowledge of Chinese American composers or Chinese composers who have left China. Sherry was touching on Zhou Wenzhong, we also have Chen Yi, Shang Zongliang, Tan Dun, Zhou Rong, Lei Liao. All of these people within the contemporary music circles in America are fairly well known. But we have a comparative lack of knowledge of mainland Chinese composers. And Rachel was talking about Gao Ping, Gao Weixi's son, which is a great window into it. Yeah, totally. But if you ask most people, can you name 5 mainland Chinese composers within American contemporary music circles? I don't know. I have no idea. So this is one problem I'm looking at. Another problem is deficiencies in our current analytical methods. And I think the talks that we've heard today are really, I find them fascinating and really encouraging in terms of different perspectives, different ways of looking at time in Chinese music. The concept that Zhou Wenzhong talks so much about synthesizing different art forms in Chinese music. And all of these are really useful things for us to consider, as well as Bobby's application of Shakespearean tools. I thought that was really innovative and a promising way forward. Nonetheless, if we stick with only what we know, we're missing certain parameters. We're missing certain key elements that will go unnoticed if we just take the tools we have and apply them. We have to be creative. We have to come up with some new methods. There are lots of reasons for both of these problems: our lack of knowledge of mainland Chinese composers and the deficiencies in our current analytical methods. But one common source that I'm interested in, just because of my interest in linguistics, is the linguistic barrier, the language barrier. If you don't know any Chinese, right, you see this wall of characters. Maybe your friend has a tattoo on his arm that says strength or soup or who knows. And that's you can't even read it, you can't pronounce it. And it's just, I think it's very easy for Americans to just put it in a box as Asian or Chinese, and we can't get beyond that. So what I'm arguing for is an increased phonological awareness, and I'm going to be showing some tools that are used in phonology, some software, some analytical tools. These are tools that can be used by anyone. You don't have to have a technical background. You don't have to have a degree in linguistics. And I think they are an important way forward for us. It's not a solve-all analytical tool. It cannot be applied exclusively, and it cannot be applied in the same way to every piece. It is very flexible, and you have to know what you're dealing with before you can apply it. But it is an important window in. Okay, so a little bit of background about the phonological awareness I'm talking about. The main factor we're concerned here with is pitch. So, of course, there are many other factors that people research, rhythm, syntax, semiotics, the list goes on and on and on, but today, for our purposes, we're focusing on pitch. Cross-linguistically, we have lots of variation. And let me just show you these charts. So this is the International Phonetic Alphabet. This contains all the sounds that a human being can make, all the sounds that we find in all of the world's languages. Okay, so some are voiced phonemes like b, g, d. Some are voiceless, p, k, t. And we have all sorts of variation cross-linguistically. What we don't find is zero pitch contrast in a language. And we don't find a language that uses only voiceless phonemes. Okay? And in fact, if I speak in a monotone, if I speak in a monotonous voice, I kind of sound like a machine, right? We associate monotone with aliens, with robots, with something that's not human. We need this variation. So it's always important, we can agree on that, but its specific role varies widely depending on what kind of language it is. One important way of measuring pitch in speech is the physical correlate, which is the fundamental frequency, F0. And this is the fundamental frequency of our vocal cords as they vibrate. So this can convey all sorts of different information, attitude, linguistic, emotion, contextual, all sorts of things. And one important thing, which I'll reiterate, is that the emphasis is on a gradient pitch contrast, not on absolute pitch levels and not on absolute intervals. It's about the gradient proportions. Okay, these tables I already showed you. A little bit of background about prosodic hierarchy. This is a vast subject, extremely interesting and rich. I encourage anyone interested to delve deeper into it. This is basically a way of organizing our utterances. And this is one method that I like to use. So at the top of this level, we have the utterance. That's sort of, when I say a sentence, that's the utterance. Okay, how do we break it down? From there, we have intonational phrases, smaller parts of the utterance. Beneath that, it's made up of phonological phrases, phonological words, feet, and syllables. Now, depending on whose theory you're using, this hierarchy looks a little bit different, but this is a nice sort of way for us to start looking at this. Okay, so now let's use these tools to see how pitch works in English. In English, it's a post-lexical element, meaning it applies at higher levels, closer to the utterance level, rather than at the syllable level. The distinct pitch contours we use are very important, but they're separable from the syllables, they're separable from words. And we use them to show things like stress, emotion, context. A great example is, Lieberman talks a lot about this. He did some really sort of pioneering research in the 70s. So if I say, doctors use penicillin, doctors use penicillin, the branch on the left, doctors use penicillin. The strongest part is doctors. Who uses penicillin? Doctors use penicillin. And then each strong and weak branch has its own strong and weak. What do doctors use to cure this? Doctors use penicillin. That's the one on the right. Doctors use penicillin. And branching down strong, weak within that. And this is what both of these utterances look like with my beautiful voice. That was a joke. So the blue line is pitch. The yellow line is intensity. The black bands are performance. And you can see the first one, doctors use penicillin. The blue line is highest on doctors, right at the beginning. Doctors use penicillin, rises at the end. So we can see how pitch is functioning in those examples. Now, pitch in Chinese also functions at high levels of prosody, but at the base level, it is inseparable from syllables, from morphemes. It is as important in Chinese as vowels are in English. If I say kit, cat, cut, caught, those all mean really different things. If I say ma, 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 in Chinese, those all mean really, really different things. If I say 我想问你, I want to ask you. If I say 我想吻你, I want to kiss you. You have to be careful. So fundamentally, it's at a much more base level in the prosodic hierarchy. And again, the importance is in the contours and the proportions within each speaker's comfortable vocal range. It's not about, okay, third tone is going to be D sharp to G double flat in this register. It's not about the specific intervals or note values. So standard Mandarin has 4 tones, plus a 5th neutral tone. And the numbers here are a system instituted by Yuanren Chao, Zhao Yuanren, who was a wonderful Chinese linguist and basically represents our comfortable speaking range. 1 is the lowest, 5 is the highest. Again, varies from speaker to speaker, varies depending on emotional state and context. So tone 1 is a high level tone, 5-5. Ma. In this case, this character means mother. Tone 2 is a rising tone from mid to high. Ma. In this case, the character means toad. Tone 3, depending on context, is a contour tone, so it's 2-1 or 2-1-4, a low dipping tone. Ma, ma. And this character means horse. Tone 4 is a falling tone, 5-1. Ma. In this case, this character means to scold. And here are two different representations of the contours. And for analytical purposes, we usually group tones 1 and 2 together as high tones, and tones 3 and 4 together as minus high tones. And that's because of the parts of the tones that are most salient. Okay, so then my question from here is, what are the possibilities for linguistic and musical pitch interaction in Chinese music? Because there are hemispheric asymmetries in terms of linguistic and musical pitch perception and production within our brain, but we can't rule out the possibility of shared processes, shared mechanisms. So if pitch is playing a different role in your native language, doesn't that make it a worthy pursuit, even if we don't find anything? To me, I mean, just to be aware of that, the neurological difference based on the native linguistic environment should affect, our considerations going into performance and analysis. Okay, so in Chinese, we find lots of interesting bonds between linguistic and musical pitch that Americans, maybe it's a little bit harder to imagine. So one example is some merchants' calls or market cries. And even 10, 20, 30 years ago, these were much more elaborate, and I wish I had great recordings of them from shining your shoes, cutting your hair, anything, just beautiful, ornamented, wonderful, wonderful songs just made up of these words. I happened to be walking down the street in Sichuan, and this dude was selling buns. He was selling hot buns. And the word for bun is mantou, mantou. And he had recorded himself singing mantou, mantou, mantou. And he was playing this, he was blasting this off the back of his motorcycle. That's a little boy running to come get the mantou. So very interesting. It's just a word, but it becomes its own song with a definite interval and rhythm. We also see great variability in folk song melodies and lyrics based on the tonal system and the tonal rules of that region, that dialect. So for any of you that were here last year, I was talking a little bit about Bright Sheng's The Stream Flows for solo violin, which is based on a Yunnan folk song called Xiaohe Tang Shui. And I was looking at, okay, he changes the melody from the original folk song. Now, if I map words onto this, can any of these changes be explained by a pull from the Yunnan tonal system for the original folk song to Bright Sheng's native tonal system? And I found that there was a lot of evidence for that at key structural points, sort of the most obvious points within the piece. There's also been a lot of research done in China, on this folk song, and sort of the variation that we experience, the transformations in melody, ornamentation, and even in lyrics as it goes from tonal system to tonal system. We also find, and I just learned about this summer, and I think I was with you, Sherry, I don't remember, but the possibility of an entirely sung language, Wushu. This is a group of women in Hunan that they weren't allowed to have an education, and they wanted a way of communicating just amongst themselves. So they made up their own language. It is written down. There's an orthographic system. It cannot be spoken. It has to be sung. And it's kind of dying out now. There are a few women who still know it, and it's passed on, person to person. But Han Dun recently did some research on this, and then he wrote the piece Yushu's Secret Songs of Women. But that's fascinating to me. I mean, what kind of brains that didn't have intonal language as their native language would come up with something like that, right? It says something about, you know, the way that they're thinking about pitch. Another great option or demonstration of the intersection between linguistic and musical pitch in Chinese music is Chinese theater or Chinese opera, xixu. And this is something that there are, you know, at least tens of varieties of. And I'm not going to play examples just for the sake of time, but the largest distinction you can find is between North and South. The genre of xixu that everyone knows is Jingju, Peking opera. That's, you know, we see the face paint and we hear the drums and everything. Americans are kind of most familiar with this. And what I've noticed is that in the North, there tend to be fewer tones, 4 tones. In the South, there tend to be more tones, 5 or 6, or sometimes even 9. The range doesn't change. So if you have fewer tones, that means you can have bigger intervals. If you have more tones, that means you must have smaller intervals. And I've noticed that reflected in the music. In Cantonese opera, there's lots of really small localized ornamentation, whereas in Jingju, the intervals tend to be much bigger, especially when sort of the recitative sections, painting works that way. Getting into instrumental pieces and vocal pieces for contemporary Chinese music. Another option we see is implicit or general, what I call tone painting. And this is pieces that imitate speaking without representing specific words. And I got to know lots of really interesting examples of this. Lots of great composers this summer. Guo Wenjing, his piece is based on La Bada, which is a sort of an old melody that sort of melodic contour that he then plays with. The famous Butterfly Lovers Concerto, which people usually exclude from contemporary music analysis because it's floofy and pentatonic, right? That's the stereotype. Chen Gang has said that the opening melody is actually based on Fangyan. It's based on a dialect, and it's trying to imitate someone speaking this dialect. Gao Weijie's Mu, originally for pipa and then rewritten for violin. The opening in the piano part, he has said, "Oh, actually, I was trying to imitate Sichuan Hua. I was trying to imitate Sichuan dialect with that rhythm there." Jia Daqun has a lot of pieces also that imitate Sichuan Hua, because that's his native language. Also, a composer that we know better in the States, Liang Lei Liang, and he wrote a saxophone quartet called Yuan, and that is based entirely on the 4 tones of Standard Mandarin, which I find fascinating, as well as the inner movement of a piece, an electronic suite called Hearing Landscapes. And I believe Professor Rao is currently doing some analysis on this for the last one. Okay, so that's for implicit tone painting. We also have the possibility for explicit tone painting. And this is pieces that tone paint specific names or specific words. Zhu Jian'er has a tendency to do this. He likes to paint his own name, Zhu Jian'er, on the artpool. Sort of a signature within the music. Chen Yi likes to do this a lot. A lot of her music does this. Her suite for Chinese fiddle, she is imitating some lines from a poem by Su Shi, and this is okay. So first, I'll just read the lyrics sort of normally. 明月几时有，把酒问青天. I look upon the moon and I raise my glass. When will I look upon the clear sky and I raise my glass? When will the moon come? Something along these lines. So if you read it just normally, it's kind of whatever. You can hear the tones. It's not that musical. If this is Chen Yi reciting it.
明月几时有，把酒问青天. It's
beautiful. It's song-like. It reminds of these exaggerated contours. then she imitates this in the second movement, I believe it's the second movement of her Chinese fiddle suite. Following the melodic contour of the words precisely. So there are some pre-existing methods, I'm not going to spend too much time on this part, for determining linguistic and musical pitch correspondence, especially in vocal music. Because one of the fascinating questions is, what does the tonal language do with singing? Right? Do the tones dictate the melody? Do we kind of turn it off and forget about tones? Is there a spectrum? And it's different for each language. Chinese does have a hierarchy. Things like merchants' calls are sort of at one end of the spectrum where they follow the contour of the tones exactly, and then you have stuff which completely disregards it. Like pop songs that sort of follow a set melody. Marjorie Chan did some interesting research on Cantonese pop songs, speaking of pop songs, in which she found not that the tones were governing the melody, but that there were matching tonal sequences across verses. Long and Deal, oversimplified here for our purposes, but essentially, if a tone goes up from one syllable to the next, the accompanying melody should not go down, and vice versa. And then Lee's prominence theory, which I tend to sort of use a lot in my own analysis, is a prominence theory. So points that are most salient within the musical structure and the most salient linguistic elements, those are the prime targets for correspondence. If we have those, we can fill in the blanks with the rest of the stuff. So my question is, how do we get towards analytical methods for instrumental music that, maybe it's based on words, explicitly, implicitly, where do we go from here? And so initial parameters for us to consider that just show the flexibility of this tool. Where is the composer from? What are his native linguistic environments, his native tonal systems, his native phonological systems? If the piece is drawing explicitly from a folk song melody or other material with lyrics, how has the original melody been changed? And if so, can this be explained by any pull towards a more native tonal phonology? Is there implicit tone painting? Is there explicit tone painting? Are there other tonal influences at work here? Concrete, abstract, provable, hypothetical. So obviously, depending on the piece you have at hand, the answers you're going to come up with and the way you analyze is going to vary widely. So I'm going to do it just for one specific piece, and we'll see how it works for that, and keep in mind the flexibility of the analytical tool in the end. So this is another piece by Chen Yi. It's Memory for solo violin. She wrote it in 2010 in memory of her late violin teacher, Li Yaoji. Chen Yi's native language is Cantonese. She's from Guangzhou. And what she decided to do was take her teacher's name, Teacher Lin Lao Shi, and paint that into the music and make that the basis for the motif. There are differences in the tones of Cantonese and Mandarin, and this is essentially they both come from the same source. Cantonese preserved more tones. Cantonese preserved more initials and finals, so Cantonese has more tones than Mandarin. Depending on the classification, you can say that it has 6 or 9 tones. Anyway, lots of tones. And an important feature that I found in memory is that the tonal painting affects something more than just a surface motif. You can find it working at deeper levels. And we'll go into that more in a moment. So now, when I was first playing this piece, I was looking for Lin Lao Shi, Lin Lao Shi. I was saying that, and then I had a lot of contour. Couldn't find it anywhere. It was nowhere. It was nowhere. And then I talked to her and she said, oh, it's Cantonese. I said, oh, duh. You know, you are Cantonese. Of course you would use it in Cantonese. But not only from the standpoint of heritage, it's also, it gave her more compositional freedom. And essentially, since Mandarin has fewer tones, you have fewer choices with ornamentation, glissandi, all of these things. So those are the two reasons that she chose the Cantonese pronunciation. And so we can see the different with the Chao index on the top, Mandarin pronunciation, Yin Lao Shi, Cantonese pronunciation, native Cantonese speakers, please feel free to correct me, Lam Lo Si, approximately. Right? So this is Shan Yu reciting in lament style her teacher's name.
Lam Lo Si.
It's beautiful. It's sad. It has distinct, glissandi and these contours, and man, it's. So how would she turn this into music? Lam Lo Si.
Lam Lo Si.
This is how she chooses to represent it with Western notation.
Lam Lo Si.
So now looking at how this plays a role in sort of deeper ways, this is the opening of the piece, and we can see, I'll play it in its entirety for you in just a moment, but we see sort of an extended sentence structure at the beginning. Sort of short, long, a twist on that sentence structure, with the first clause being directly drawn from Lam Lo Si, Yin Lao Shi. Second clause, kind of some weird retrograde going on from the first clause. I mean, clearly has a relationship, so we can say is also indirectly influenced by Lam Lo Si pronunciation. And then the third clause, the longest one, is kind of more improvisatory. And the entire piece, it's only about 3 minutes long. The entire piece is made up of these constituents. So we can see as it goes on, Lam Lo Si makes lots of reappearances. It starts to get augmented, stopping as if you're grieving. Lam Lo Si, she's grieving her teacher's death. It's difficult to get this out. Sometimes we see different constituents happening simultaneously, the green and the yellow there. Sometimes we get just snippets. One of the defining characteristics of the opening, the rising fourth. So we see that the rising fourths there, the bottom measure 36, stacked fourths, rising by fourths. So that's sort of a play on that. And then at the climactic section, we see not only simultaneous different constituents, but double Lam Lo Sis, double teacher lins in very, very dissonant sort of grinding intervals to really show the pain of this loss. And the last iteration is with harmonics, so it's kind of not happy, but reach some sort of peaceful accord and ascension of some sort, rather than the final end to this process. Okay, so I will play the piece. It's pretty short. sense of agency. Discovering how the melody is constructed, how the piece is put together, how do I, time the glissandi and the ornaments and everything, a very sort of involved role. It also gave me an awareness of parameters that other analytical methods would probably overlook. And like I already said, a deeper understanding of the melody and the form. So ultimate conclusions. Basically what I'm advocating for is this increased phonological awareness as some sort of attempt at a window through these opaque linguistic and cultural barriers that we come up against. I see a dual advantage of both better understanding the Chinese contemporary music we do know already, and also allowing us to explore stuff that we don't know as well. How do we approach this new stuff? How do we go out and find it? I believe it's applicable cross-culturally. It's not only that white people can use this and Chinese people can't, right? It's everyone can benefit from thinking in these terms. Right? Because linguistics, we don't think about it consciously. Oh, pitch plays this role in my language. We just speak it. We just talk. That's how we do it. So if we take a step back and really think about it in these concrete terms, we can notice some different things. Like I've been stressing all along, the flexibility of the tool based on the piece you have at hand. Not every piece is going to be structured based on a teacher's name and derived from that. But that doesn't preclude it from being a useful and widely applicable tool. And then just the broader importance that I wanted to stress is what I see forward in music theory and linguistics is sort of a merging of these fields and an application of what are traditionally considered technical, dry analytical tools as something that can really benefit us within our own field. So, thank you.
Versus, say, European listening, or also even the difference between performers and non-performers, like Cass, is that there would, because I know when these experiments have been performed with Western musicians, like violinists, for example, and of performing musicians listening to music, there's much more activity here than with the non-musician. The floor is moving, really matching pitch in many ways. In fact, that's some thought of how we even learn to hear interval and pitch distinctions is it's as if we were singing silently.
So what Chris you were talking about is really helping explore a little bit as a visceral mimesis by Arnie Cox, and that's a really interesting way of thinking about how the body reacts to things that they hear in a kind of reductive, way.
And it's also connected to your issue of gestures.
Yeah, yes, it is. Yeah. So I just thought I thought that really beautiful work. Really appreciate it. And it also makes me feel that there's so much that one can do with understanding this kind of interaction between the performer and the composition. Because I think one thing that you said at the end was very interesting to me about agency. Because I feel a lot of times performers actually feel, rather than having this agency, they feel their own interpretation need to be screened by this cultural heritage, and it's kind of burden rather than agency. So I thought that your take on the agencies is a very fascinating one, because it definitely allows you to perform a little bit differently, but I just like to, for myself, and I thank you for bringing that out, because the notion of agency and doing the work you're doing is really very interesting one. But more directly to your talk, the question I have for you is, in your 音乐体是有把酒问今天 example, that is actually a text that's been said a lot, right? So what year was that piece? Was it
2000s, I believe?
2000? Because there's another piece written by Zhen Qigang. It's 水调歌头, and actually it recites 音乐体是有把酒问今天 in exactly the same way. I mean, not every poet will go and recite a poem, in exactly the same way it's written by someone else, right? And the composers, and I mean, your linguistic skill, your analysis of linguistics is so fascinating and sophisticated, and I feel very humbled by it, because I actually wrote about it, that piece, in linguistic fashion, and it was published in the journal, now deceased. It's called Journal of Music in China. It was published in 2000, but I have no skills that you have right now to analyze it. I simply was analyzing it, really. So I gave that paper actually at a theory conference, and I actually sing like Beijing opera style, sing that phrase, and Jonathan Bernard was there. He was so because the way the composer had said that text is exactly in correlation to how you would recite it in the Peking opera high pitch, heightened speech style. And so the question for you is this: in that example, it's actually text setting, right, with this intonation that give rise to actually the melody. And here you're dealing with instrumental, right? So how do you see the task to be different when you're using what you're doing with instrumental work versus you do the same with text setting? Do you feel you will approach it differently, or?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think with text setting, maybe you can take sort of a more abstract view, and how is this painting being achieved? Whereas, I mean, with Chen Yi, with this specific piece, she wanted to imitate the Celtic for the melodic contours, but not to write a melody to set a text. So they're not mutually exclusive, but I think so. Probably the intention of the composer is important, or the purpose of the piece. You know, is it to text set, or is it inspired by the melodic contours of the full tones? And that would affect how you. That's a really good question.
It really renders in some way similar result, but for an entirely different purpose, right? Yeah.
Okay.
And it was really interesting because I had that piece out and Tanglewood was performing that piece. So a singer from Tanglewood called me up to say, well, how do I do this piece? Because I don't speak Chinese and I need to recite it in that way. But then in that particular example, it's really fascinating as well because that piece was actually composed with the help of a very famous director in Paris. So who's Chinese as well. So anyhow, just throw that out there for you to kind of as a comparative study.
Right.
I first performed last year in Shanghai.
Which one?
Just dance.
Oh, the
There is a more playful side in this piece as well. First of all, the tone painting is a traditional game for the harp players. So if you are close to an harp player from mainland, hopefully you probably have, they're notorious for playing your names on the instrument. Something about harp because it's loud and it has a voice range. For example, when I was in high school, in my high school ensemble, our roll call, daily roll call for rehearsal, is the harp players play each player's name out on harp. It's a very playful thing for teenagers to do. And a lot of times when you stay within the group, the culture of that group becomes more playful. Is that our player actually can develop sentences, for example, ni hao, and with your name on it, attached to it, and there will be a daily reading of that. So I will show up with my cello, and I will answer the harp player in the same language. So it's a real game. Another thing about Lin Laoshi is that he is like the Chinese Dorothy Delay. He's so famous, and he had taught generations of harp players. Many of them have major careers. So this beloved teacher figure, and also remember in China that if you're a teacher, your students are like your children. So he's like a father figure to many of these students and composers. How long it is, she's like, maybe has a really close connection there as on a personal level. So the playfulness plus the pain of losing the teacher in such a way. This was a sudden death. He passed away. Basically, he was on Chinese medicine for some minor illness, and the medicine was not given correctly. So he was basically, it was an accidental death. Yeah, literally accidental. It was so sudden. Everyone was shocked when that happened. So when you play that piece, all that comes to me, because he used to live in an apartment that's one building away from me. And I used to see him, and he had these herds of students who would come to his house for lessons, one after another, one after another. So he never stopped teaching. So it's very, very emotional actually when I hear you play. And Lin Laoshi in Cantonese, and I'm actually under the impression that I don't speak Cantonese. Maybe there are more sentences in that piece other than Lin Laoshi.
Oh, the I love that.
You should check it out.
Yeah.
It makes all kinds of like
Yeah.
the one pizza thing. They're twos or not. One of them is acting like a father, and the other is like acting like a kid. They're just like having conversations and arguing. It's amazing.
Do you know who the composer is?
No, I know the name. I can give it to you.
Guess rather than having lunch, we can sit and there are drinks and potato chips and cookies and glasses and napkins. So, all over here.